Welcome to the second of this year's Green Entrepreneurship Workshop Series. My name is Brock Dickinson. I am the Entrepreneur in Residence at the University of Waterloo, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's session. I do want to take a moment to just quickly do a few quick housekeeping items or to introduce a couple of initial ideas. First, as is our custom in Canada, I want to begin with a land acknowledgement. This event is being hosted and co-sponsored by the University of Waterloo, which is located on the traditional territories of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. And in fact, the university is located on what is known as the Haldimand Tract, which is land that was actually promised to the Six Nations of the Grand River. And we acknowledge that in occupying the territories that we do, our present standard of living is reliant in part on the gifts and contributions of Indigenous and First Nations peoples in the historic past and in our present. And we'd invite all of you to think a little bit today as we start this session about the traditional territories that you are currently occupying or residing in, and to reflect on the contributions of Indigenous peoples to the communities that you call home today. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items. I would point out that today's sessions are available in English, French, and Spanish. To listen to the audio stream for this event in your preferred language, please click the interpretation icon that you'll find at the bottom of the screen and select English, French, or Spanish, depending upon your preference. Later in the session, we'll have the opportunity to pose some questions to our various presenters who you'll meet in just a couple of minutes. We would ask that you use the Q&A function to pose those questions. There is also a chat function. We'd invite you to introduce yourselves to each other, to share comments and ideas there as the discussions unfold. But for the formal Q&A session later in the program, please use the Q&A function itself. Today's event, as I mentioned, is hosted by the University of Waterloo, but co-hosted with the Commission for Environmental Cooperation. This is the second of these Green Entrepreneurship Workshop series that we have run over the last couple of years. And this has been a great partnership to explore both the ideas that are emerging from students and youth at universities across North America, and to connect that to the amazing work that the CEC does in promoting environmental projects, programs, and awareness across Canada, the United States, and Mexico. One of our other partners in this particular series of events is known as the Eco-Innovation Network, which is a partnership of 8 universities located across North America. You can see the universities that are involved in this network there on the screen. I know that many of today's participants are from these universities. We want to thank you for your institution's participation. And if you're not a member of the Eco-Innovation Network, if your university is not part of this group, we'd encourage you to find out more and to think about joining this network in the future. With that, it's now my pleasure to introduce the individual who is going to be our facilitator or our MC for today's session. This is Majid Mirza. Majid is the founder and CEO of ESG Tree. He is a global expert on impact investing and ESG, or environment, social, and governance data. He is a former head of various impact investing organizations and a founding board member of the Canadian Forum for Impact Investing and Development, also known as CAFID. He has led ESG strategy, reporting, and research initiatives for over a dozen private equity firms and foundations, and has been working on the development of the ESG model and concept for a number of years now. Majid is also currently a doctoral student at the University of Waterloo, where his research focuses on the use of ESG in private capital markets. Majid, it's great to have you with us today. I'm looking forward to the session. I know you'll do an amazing job facilitating this, so I will turn things over to you.
Thank you so much, Brock. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And welcome, everyone. This is so exciting. A new Green Entrepreneurship series that kicked off with the first event. So welcome to the second session in a series of 5 workshops on the topic of private enterprise and new entrepreneurs. It's a very exciting topic with some amazing speakers lined up for today. So I'm dialing in from the University of Waterloo campus at Conrad Grebel College, in fact. at the Kindred Center for Peace Advancement. It's an incubator here. It would be great to hear where you guys are tuning in from. If you want to put that in the chat box to everyone, where you're tuning in from, and maybe even what brought you here. So, so what are your expectations from this event? We'd love to hear from you there, and I'll keep monitoring the chat box for shout outs a little bit later on. As Brock mentioned, this is a partnership between the University of Waterloo Entrepreneurship and Environment Office with support from the Commission for Environmental Cooperation, CEC, and the Eco-Innovation Network. The event is designed for youth, students, and entrepreneurs from across Canada, the US, and Mexico, and of course, across the entire world, translated simultaneously into English, French, and Spanish. So as Brock said, please do feel free to connect to the audio channel in your preferred language. And I remember to slow myself down there for the interpreters. I'm gonna do that now a little more intentionally. According to the latest updates, as Brock mentioned, we have 1,292 registrants from 76 countries, including Sri Lanka, Brazil, Nigeria, Egypt, the United Kingdom, and even my native country, Pakistan. So it's an amazingly diverse event, and we welcome all of you. Just moving on to a little bit of my role and what I'll be doing here. I'll be introducing today's speakers and presenters. This will be followed by...
Sorry, Majid, if I may just ask you if you can just slow down a bit.
Sure,
Thank you
absolutely.
so much.
No worries at all. That was my slowed down version, Liliana. So I'll slow it down even more. I'll be introducing today's speakers and presenters. That's the first part. This will be followed by presentations from today's three panelists. Then there's an open Q&A where you can use the Q&A function embedded in Zoom to pose questions directly to the panelists. I'll do my best to select a few representative questions, and then we will conclude in about 90 minutes time. With that, just a little bit of a introduction to the panelists. We are having 15-minute presentations today on the topic of private enterprise and new entrepreneurs, how established companies can support new entrepreneurs. And without further ado, let me actually jump into the introduction of our first speaker, Juan Del Cerro. Juan Del Cerro is a social entrepreneurship expert. He believes in the impact that social entrepreneurship and innovation have in solving society's biggest issues. He is the founder and director of Disruptivo.tv and Social Lab Mexico, and winner of the Entrepreneur National Prize for his work enhancing entrepreneurship in Mexico. In 2017, he was selected as a gifted citizen for his potential to impact over 10 million people through his work. Juan is also a founding partner at the Mexican Association of Entrepreneurs, or ASEM. He is the author of the book, What is Social Entrepreneurship?, which has sold over 3,000 hard copies and over 10,000 digital downloads. Juan is also a professional panelist, having promoted social entrepreneurship in 4 different continents and having reached over 100,000 people. Without further ado, Juan, over to you.
Muchas gracias, Majid, y muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mahid, and thank you to all the team for inviting us and for organizing this incredible event. I speak very fast formally, so today I'm going to do a very important effort to go slower because I know that the interpreters have a very hard task. But I'm very excited and very happy to be with all of you in more than 72 countries. Incredible, talking about the importance of entrepreneurship and how the entrepreneurs can collaborate with our impact. I see that there are people from many places, and please tell us in the chat, where are you connecting from? Who is an entrepreneur? We have somebody from Iran. I had never reached Iran. Alejandro is from Aguascalientes, Tanzania, Emily from the state of Mexico, Gabriela from Oaxaca, and from Charlotte from the United States. I had the opportunity to visit Charlotte from Tabasco, Canada, India, Delhi, India, Canada. Uh, this is a great success. I'm very excited. Continue participating in the chat. Tell us where you connecting from and who is an entrepreneur. And we have from Tijuana, Botswana. I'm sorry. You tell me if you want me to speak slower or what. Before I start and before I tell you a little bit about the social entrepreneurship and the task that social entrepreneurs have, I want to give you a gift. I want to give you a gift to all the people that are seeing us from all the latitudes. And this is the social entrepreneurship manual. Unfortunately, I only have the version in Spanish, but if you request it in English, we will translate it into English if we have enough people. I'm a big nerd and I love social entrepreneurship. And I also love the Star Wars. So this manual, it gives you entrepreneurship to all. They introduced me already. I have been for more than 8 years working with entrepreneurs. And it's very difficult to tell you, come on to go into my website because there's a lot of material. So in this manual, I joined or I gathered a lot of the best materials that I have. And the first is articles, my free books, free training, etc., etc., etc. In this manual where we have social entrepreneurship. So it's very easy to obtain it. Just follow me on Instagram and send me a message or send me a message on Instagram. So you can tell me, oh, I saw you at the CC event and I can share information with you. If you're not in Instagram, I'm also in TikTok and I'm also in LinkedIn. It's Juan del Cerro, and I'm in all the social networks. You can find me there. And also I can see you my WhatsApp. My social networks are mainly in Spanish, but the WhatsApp, I answer the messages in English. Or if you write in the social networks, I studied a lot of French, but if you write in French, I can also answer in French. If you want the digital manual, you can download it. Or if you want to talk to me about entrepreneurship or in WhatsApp, I'll be more than happy to answer. Okay, now I don't have too much time, so let's start. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what can we do as entrepreneurs and how can we create this spirit of collaboration. But before talking about collaboration, please remind me of time. But before that, I want to tell you a little bit about what are the social enterprises. And please tell me in the chat who has heard about what is a social business. Okay, I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to go faster. A social business is a company that says, okay, the world is not going to change by itself. Poverty, inequality, the environment is not going to change by itself. We have to take action. Before we were taught that the businesses were only for generating money. And nowadays we know that that's not true. The real success of the companies is to change the life of people. It should be to change the life of people. That is basically what a social business is. The businesses, the impact and the business are not fighting. On the contrary, if they join, they can create both things. A social company can create can be a potential with profit, and it has a focus to solve social problem in order not to go too much in depth. A social business, for example, in Mexico, is called Hilo Mexico. That is a company that sells solar panels in vulnerable communities where they don't have any access to electricity. They sell the solar panels, and they are renewable energy, and they take access to these people who do not have access to electricity. They don't give them away as a gift, they sell them to them. So with all this, and now that we are close to how can ideal companies create more generation, I have a collaboration at three levels that we have towards big companies, through other businessmen. And the truth, as in, we cannot do things by ourselves. We have to create ecosystems. And a basic guide of how to create ecosystems, I'm talking about the three levels of collaboration. The basic is the exchange. And this is the most simple one. I have this that is useful to you. I have um, I apologize. Can you please go slower? I was telling you that we have these three levels of collaboration. The first one is the exchanges. The exchanges do not have a cost. I have a means of communication. A businessman needs the promotion, and this is a win-win situation because I promote him and I have the exchange. The second level, to give it a title, I gave the title of contracting. I have a project for which I need what you're doing. Many companies cannot solve their very big challenges. Sometimes they're very slow, sometimes they're very bureaucratic, they can't reach youth. So it's very important to contract businessmen so that they can provide a service and then solve their problems. I already have a project. I need your help to solve or to participate in that project. It's my project. And the third level, and now that we are businessmen, is the co-creation. Okay, let's sit down together and let's define what you want to accomplish, what I want to accomplish, and we want something new from zero, and we go as partners and we can create something jointly. So this small, I have been working for 8 years, and all my collaboration goes into one of these three levels. I'm not going to have time to go more in depth, but there are many examples of collaboration of companies. One of them is Ecolana. Ecolana helps, Ecolana is a business that doesn't have the capability of recycling all the material. Ecolana has a digital map of all the collection centers where people can go and put their Tetra Pak or the milk cartons, for example. They contract this business women who are more innovators, and they can go to the collection centers, and they created an alliance with them that have more than 6 years. And Ecolana has become one of the most important startups in Mexico. I'm going beyond, but these are some of the examples. This is a small example of how companies can create this type of solutions.
Les propongo que para no pasarme el tiempo de los demás, lo dejemos para el Q&A, para las preguntas y respuestas, y creo que por ahora estoy prácticamente ya en tiempo para que sigamos con la conversación, Majid, o no sé si tú me dices si tengo un poquito más de tiempo, pero creo que es momento de pasar. ¿Qué pasó?
Do you want me to continue, or do I have enough time? Can I continue? I can continue.
Yes, Juan, you have 2 minutes.
I have 2 minutes. Okay, tengo 2 minutos más. Entonces, aprovecho para contarles.
So let me tell you very rapidly about the tips. We have to be very mindful of the time, but I would like to share with you some tips. If you want to talk to the companies and start your social business, do not help create value. A social business does not have to feel that just by having a positive impact that will be enough. That customers will and hire me because I am good. No, you have to be the best product in the market and be successful together with your customers. Well, the company wants to reach out to the young people, but you have to develop yourself as a company, not as someone that is helping someone out, and to be successful together with your customer. So we need to understand what success means for your customers. So you have to be very, very clear on what your values are as a social business and what things you don't want to negotiate. As you start growing and as you become much more and more successful, maybe you don't want to collaborate with some companies or companies that will want you to do something different. So if your focus is environmental impact and a company that pollutes a lot uh, wants to work with you, that it's only greenwashing and they are not concerned about the environmental impact, but they just want to clean their reputation, you have to be willing to say no. If you are not willing to commit yourself to align with your impact in the company, we will not be able to collaborate. We can go deeper into these areas if you contact me. And the last point, Mahid, is that you need to define your secret sauce, as we usually call it. What do you have as the social business that the others do not have? The entrepreneurs always bring things to the table that companies cannot do or are not capable of doing. So let yourself know with other companies, and that will allow you to create long-term relationships. So there in these spaces we always struggle with the time, but I think that at least I was able to give an outlook of the collaborations. No entrepreneur can work by him or herself. We need to collaborate with other entrepreneurs and other companies. Thank you so much.
Juan, thank you so much for that. There's such brilliant content in there. If I may speak as a ESG or social entrepreneur myself, so many interesting things. And as you said, there's always the challenge of time, but we're really looking forward to the Q&A session. You spoke about exchange, contracting, co-creation. Those are very fundamental concepts. And thank you so much for that amazing a very quality content packed in a small amount of time. Thank you so much. With that, of course, we will wait to re-engage you, Juan, in the Q&A, and I will proceed with the introduction of Samira Khan. Samira Khan was most recently a director at Microsoft working on citizenship within the digital inclusion and US community engagement team. Previously, she was working at the intersection of social innovation and impact and tech at salesforce.org, creating collaboratives, partnerships, and surfacing product, as well as go-to-market insights. Samira has worked across corporations, governments, and the social sector for over 15 years on innovative solutions to solving some of society's greatest challenges. She is especially interested in strategic impact partnerships and business model innovations for good. Her work spans the Americas, Middle East, Asia. She is a former strategy management consultant, and while at A.T. Kearney in Southeast Asia, she played a key role in starting and building its social impact organization. She also has a passion for creative writing, narratives, and communication marketing, and is committed to topics related to economic empowerment, gender, social entrepreneurship, and youth empowerment towards the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. With that, Samira, I'd invite you to have your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Bajid, for the generous and detailed introduction. So moving over to the presentation, I am going to be drawing from my extensive experience both at Salesforce as well as at Microsoft, working on social impact, looking at social entrepreneurs in particular, and really thinking about how these large tech companies can work in greater collaboration with the entrepreneurs and enterprises themselves. But I'll also be drawing from just my broader social impact experience and my experience working within communities. So first and foremost, wanted to give you a sense of the mindset and the risks and incentives that a company is taking into consideration when working with entrepreneurs. So as a company, it's very important to think about how working with entrepreneurs can advance your vision, your mission, and your values. I have a lot of experience in social impact in particular, so have been very keen on working more closely with social entrepreneurs that are solving some of the world's greatest challenges around climate change, education, health, equality at large, etc. And if you look at Microsoft and Microsoft's mission, it's truly about empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And you absolutely cannot do that if you are not working with entrepreneurs and if you are not working hand in hand with social entrepreneurs. Because if you look at this sort of aspect of every, as was mentioned in the earlier presentation, entrepreneurs truly understand communities. They sometimes have niche solutions that are well suited to the problem or those communities. And so they have inroads into insights that large companies don't necessarily have. And they are coming out with interesting models at a pace that companies can't necessarily scale. So with that said, or innovation at a pace where sort of companies can't necessarily scale innovation at the same pace. So with that, also wanted to turn to Salesforce and look at some of Salesforce's core values, trust. So how do you build community trust? One way you build community trust is really designing for the community, really putting sort of the user and the customer at the center. So for a company that values trust, it's very important to truly, truly understand that community. How do you do it? Working with entrepreneurs on the ground who are thinking about that community, who are thinking about specific innovations, who are coming out with new innovations every day. Very similarly, as companies are thinking more and more about customer success, they want to have a deeper impact. So they want to address not only sort of the profitability, but the impact side. And oftentimes with impact, it's truly important to go in with partnership or go in collaboration because they are such large scale systems level problems involving governments, involving community organizations on the ground, and involving large companies. And there's sometimes overlap in the types of programs and goals that these sectors are trying to achieve. Similarly, if we look at equality, it's really important to, again, understand that community. So really what I'm trying to say here is the entrepreneurs, due to their insights, their inroads into the community, their relationships, have an ability to help companies build trust, drive innovation, and drive their equality and sustainability agenda. Now, turning to sort of a third company that I wanted to sort of throw into the mix, Novartis, a healthcare company. As they thinking about extending, people's lives and sort of welfare, health and welfare of the people, it's a very cross-sector problem, and Novartis is not going to solve it on their own. In healthcare in particular, supply chains are very important, and really getting those sort of drugs and solutions to the last mile. And what social entrepreneurs can help, let's say, healthcare companies do is extend sort of that access of their supply chain. So again, these are simply examples to frame up how important it is for entrepreneurs to align their work to a company's mission, vision, and values, and how important it is for companies to figure out what their mission, vision, and values mean in the context of working with entrepreneurs and how they can develop the strategy around it. So more specifically, corporate purpose, as you must know, is becoming increasingly important. Companies are trying to create a locus for their purpose, sort of that mission, vision we just spoke about. And they're trying to really make sure that they're working hand in hand to solve some of these challenges. I already talked about enhancing trust by working in partnership with communities. Also, by working in partnership with entrepreneurs, these companies are able to reach deeper into the communities and increase their footprint with the leaders and the influencers. They are also demonstrating their leadership and commitment to those communities, which opens doors to the markets, commercially speaking, and to do joint and collaborative social impact work. And finally, I've already mentioned driving innovation. It's a very collaborative sort of problem, and collaborative action is required. And the way you collaborate is really by working with small and large players alike. So if you look at the broader realm of social entrepreneurship and social innovation, working hand in hand with social entrepreneurs, going on that journey with them in terms of purpose becomes very, very important, and figuring out what keys those entrepreneurs hold to really help the company achieve and advance their purpose. But at the same rate, if we think about entrepreneurs and companies, fundamentally businesses have been profitability driven. They want to be sustainable. And if we particularly think about COVID and the experience we just had, companies with stronger ESG practices, companies with stronger ties to the community, companies who are working more closely, with social entrepreneurs tended to be more resilient. They tended to be able to really serve the community in a time of crisis and in a time of greatest need, and did better in the markets in particular. So that's yet another proof point, or another reason that companies need to be working more closely with entrepreneurs. If you look at the green economy in particular, entrepreneurs are actually driving some of the ESG innovation, especially in a realm that I've spent a lot of time in, which is the impact measurement and management piece of things. And so when companies, large companies, are working with these social entrepreneurs, with these entrepreneurs, they are better able to go to their commercial clients, the large companies that they serve, that are sustainability forward, that are impact forward, but even in general, with not only, let's say, a technology, if they're a tech company, with not only a product, but also a point of view on impact, a point of view on sort of sustainability. And they only get that by really understanding the community and the innovation sort of landscape, which comes through greater work with entrepreneurs. So there's this opportunity to co-create an agenda around social innovation. And finally, I think I already mentioned the pace of innovation. I think in general, the pace of innovation is increasing. And in order for companies to continue to be market relevant and grow their companies, they're going to have to work more closely with entrepreneurs on the ground. And this is especially true if we think about companies that are trying to expand their global reach and their global footprint, because as you can imagine, the climate change challenges and levers that you can pull in Asia with the government, with sort of rising levels of water, etc., are very different from some of the things that we're struggling with in the US, or that the things Europe is struggling with legislation coming out around human rights, around climate, etc. So there are different risks and incentives. And one way to best understand that and address those is to work with fast moving entrepreneurs on the ground once you've had a chance to get to know them and vet them. So companies in an ideal world should be taking a very holistic, capital-based approach to how they support entrepreneurs. And it's already starting to take place and manifest in some of the social entrepreneurship as well as startup programs we see at large companies, whether that be sort of the way Salesforce engaged social entrepreneurs during COVID, whether that be Microsoft's social entrepreneurship program. And I'll get into some examples later. But companies don't just have sort of capital to offer. They have many different forms, financial capital. They have many different forms of capital. So I'm going to unpackage it a little bit for us. So let's think about financial capital. Oftentimes in the past, companies have been giving grants, sort of philanthropic donations to social entrepreneurs or nonprofits. That may be relevant in an early stage of an entrepreneur's journey as sort of catalytic capital, but at the same rate, these entrepreneurs also need impact investment. In some cases, they're seeking debt, they're seeking loan. So we'll see different examples about how companies have sort of extended the spectrum of capital that they are providing to entrepreneurs to really seed, empower, build the ecosystem around them, which makes them stronger and makes everyone and the world stronger as we think about impact and sustainability in particular. Manufactured capital is more about the product. So, companies sometimes have tech donation programs. They allow access to their technology to entrepreneurs. That's the manufactured capital piece. Intellectual capital is the piece around sharing sort of new business models, new IP, so that you can really build together for systems level problems or large social impact problems. Social, cultural, and relational capital is really about the fact that entrepreneurs have those inroads into the communities, but companies like Microsoft truly have an ability to scale globally due to their commercial relationships all over the world. So how do they provide greater access to that for the entrepreneurs is a key question. And then human capital is all the sort of skill and talent that lies within a company, and how companies are able to really allow entrepreneurs to learn from that and to borrow from that. So oftentimes there are volunteerism programs where employees are giving back to these entrepreneurs. In tech companies, it not only relates to tech support, but also relates to business support and marketing support, etc. And I'll again go into an example a little bit later about how Salesforce did that during the pandemic for social entrepreneurs. Finally, there's this notion of natural capital, and there's a link to sustainability in that. So how can sort of land be better used? How can sort of real estate be better shared? So there's an opportunity to give, get, exchange, as well as to build together. So how do you sort of, tactically work with a large company? Again, it's about creating a shared social innovation agenda. So what social problems is this company really trying to solve? Part of it can be gleaned by reading their reports and reading the latest sort of media and talking points and websites, but it really involves getting in touch with somebody within that company to truly crystallize what is the problem that that company is trying to solve from the position that they have in the marketplace, as well as based on what their strengths and core capabilities are. Because often companies are trying to figure out where they can have the most additive impact to the greatest challenges faced by society. And it's a very strategic process. So you want to understand that better. Second, there's a notion of focus. Okay, now that you understand sort of the environment the company is working in, what cause area should you be focused on? And what solution do you really have to help that company get closer to their goals? And vice versa, the company is thinking about which entrepreneurs should I be working with? So that really speaks to the focus as well as the alignment piece. And then there's a continuous measurement piece around impact and how we can better sort of track to outcomes together. So I'm going to start moving quickly because I see Majid. So one way companies work better with entrepreneurs is business model innovation, figuring out sort of what the return risk equation looks like and how they adjust to work with entrepreneurs. Another is structural innovation. I talked about employee time. It's also CEO level commitments toward entrepreneurs and toward moving the needle on climate change, health, etc. And then philanthropic innovation. I already talked about sort of the capital spectrum. One thing that I didn't have a chance to speak about yet is this notion of just collaboration and digging into that. So network-based models are hugely important. We see numerous companies coming together to form coalitions, to form networks. It's important to keep an eye for those. They'll give you an idea about joint commitments. They present opportunities to learn together. And then I think a space that's growing is the collaborative fund area. So I already mentioned that Salesforce was supporting social entrepreneurs during the pandemic. They worked with the World Economic Forum. And on this slide, you can really quickly, because I have to move quickly, glance at the types of support that the alliance was providing across sectors. So governments are a part of the alliance, entrepreneurs, as well as companies. And they're trying to mobilize these different sort of assets and really help drive more capital as well as support to entrepreneurs. And I don't have time to go through all the examples, so I'll share the one sentence version of each. IKEA, in terms of their product, has really spent time bringing entrepreneurs into their supply chain and designing with them. Their employees are heavily involved. They're also providing financial support. E&Y, Ernst & Young, EY rather, they have a whole program around impact entrepreneurship. So skill building and capacity building to really support these entrepreneurs. Just wanted to leave you with some examples. SAP, core business support that I already spoke about. Supply chain inclusion, a lot of companies think about that. How do they contract or do more work with social entrepreneurs? And then in conclusion, wanted to share sort of a letter here that was written by Jean-Philippe Courtois. He's the EVP of Transformational Partnerships at Microsoft. And to truly stress that my experience at Microsoft has been about empowering those on the ground to innovate for good. And there's no better way to do that than by working more closely with entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs. So thank you so much, Majid.
Samira, your content is always very engaging, very practical, Thank you so much for that, especially your points about how new entrepreneurs can spur innovation, improve diversity and sustainability. And what I really liked is that when you say that new entrepreneurs can help large corporations, it sounds so nice because we're always thinking about it the other way around, that the little guy needs to be helped. But I think you've proven in your presentation that the big companies, the established companies need as much help from startups and new entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for that. A couple of housekeeping things. And first, I have to remind myself to slow down for the benefit of the interpreters. I am going to try to keep reminding myself and the speakers of that as much as possible. The other second reminder before I introduce Dr. Trevon Stratton is that the open Q&A is coming up very soon. Please use the Q&A function embedded in Zoom to pose questions directly to the panelists. That would be amazing. And with that, let me introduce Dr. Trevon Stratton. Dr. Trevon Stratton is the National Economic Advisory Leader and Partner at Deloitte Canada and the Americas Economic Advisory Leader at Deloitte Global. Prior to joining Deloitte, he was the Chief Economist and Senior Vice President of Policy at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, the largest and most influential business association in Canada, representing a network of over 200,000 companies. He has advised the Prime Minister's Office, federal and provincial cabinet members, governors, and deputy governors of the Bank of Canada, senior policymakers and government officials, and C-suite business leaders on economic policy, economic development and growth, diversification, and competitiveness strategies. He is currently Vice Chair of Business at OECD Economic Policy Committee, and he sits on the Board of Governors at Ontario Tech University and the Leadership Council at the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics. Trevon is a frequent media contributor on economic issues and has appeared on as well as provided commentary for numerous news programs. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Trevon Stratton. With that, over to you.
Oh, thanks a lot for the introduction. That's great. And so, as was mentioned, this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because I've worked very closely with a number of entrepreneurs and small businesses in my previous role when I was at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, representing a number of one-person small businesses, entrepreneurs across Canada. As well as large corporations too. Of course, now, I'm the National Economic Advisory Leader at Deloitte, which is the largest professional services network in the world. It's around 170 years old. Probably safe to say that is one of the established businesses that we're talking about during this conversation too. And something from my experience that I certainly see and that a lot of the other speakers have touched upon as well is that, when it comes to entrepreneurs and when it comes to large organizations or established organizations, they have a lot in common in terms of what they're trying to achieve when it comes to social impact, when it comes to financial impact, when it comes to improving society and the environment. There are a lot of opportunities, but each organization has, or each type of organization, has different strengths. And being able to kind of bring those two things together, make the sum of the parts, greater than, that makes the whole greater than the sum of the parts. And so that's, really what I wanted to focus on during this particular presentation as well. If you're able to pull up the slides, or I can't see them. There we go. Perfect. So, I think it's safe to say, and many people have mentioned this already, that obviously the world is changing. I'm an economist, and the economy is changing quite a bit too right now. And something that ourselves at Deloitte and a lot of larger organizations or established companies are really focusing on is, what role can we play in the way in which technology is accelerating and in the way in which the economy is innovating, because a lot of smaller players and a lot of entrepreneurs are the ones that are really driving some of that. And I think a lot of large organizations are really thinking about that in terms of a couple ways. First of all, we take our social impact very seriously when it comes to improving society, but also when it comes to improving the economy. And so when it comes to creating jobs, when it comes to innovation in the economy, we also want to help the economy innovate and help the economy grow by supporting entrepreneurs. That's good for us as a larger organization. And, a few of the speakers have talked about the ecosystem that it helps create as well. But it's very good in terms of job creation. Obviously, a lot of larger businesses want to be operating in a strong, growing, competitive economy. And so supporting entrepreneurs is useful in that regard too. But then secondly, a lot of established businesses are looking to transform themselves in a lot of ways too. And so they're looking at some of these more nimble, more agile entrepreneurs to be able to help them transform internally as well. And so what I really want to focus on is how this is a two-way street. There are a lot of ways in which established businesses are able to help entrepreneurs when it comes to your social impact, certainly, but when it comes to being an entrepreneur itself as well, and operating that ecosystem with larger organizations has a lot of benefits too. And then secondly, there are a lot of ways in which these businesses are really looking for small businesses to help them transform as well. These businesses have undergone multiple transformations throughout history and over time, and they see what we need to do going forward for the economy of the future, for society of the future, and they need help with that from a number of smaller businesses and a number of entrepreneurs too. And even that idea of bringing entrepreneurial or for lack of a better term, intrapreneurial thinking to a larger organization is something that a number of larger businesses are focused on as well too. And then they were putting those two things together when it comes to creating an economic ecosystem. And I'll speak a bit about some of my experience when it comes to investment attraction in that space as well. But first of all, focusing on helping entrepreneurs, there are a lot of ways in which we do that. And I want to give you a bit of an example because certainly financing is part of it. You can go to a big bank, you can go to private equity to help create your business and to help have that type of social impact. Something that we've started to actually look at recently is how do we actually support innovative entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs as the social impact is actually, making equity investments ourselves. We're not a bank. We're a large business, but in a lot of ways, we see that as a very important way to support the economy and as actually a great way to be able to help innovate and have social impact in society as well. Is instead of us trying to create things ourselves, we see that there are a lot of great businesses out there that are doing great things, and we want to support them by actually providing a leg up or causes that we actually believe in, that we're actually going to put money behind it too and help them grow that on their own as partners together. And so recently we created the Deloitte Ventures in Canada. It exists in some other countries at Deloitte around the world as well. We are really focused in making a minority equity stake in a lot of social impact businesses to help drive some of this going forward too. And so, we look for alignment when it comes to values. We look for alignment when it comes to priorities, and being able to do that, we're happy to share the risk and also to be able to share the impact that we can have by doing that together. Similarly, I want to talk about kind of working together with organizations and what they have in terms of a network. In terms of mentorship, a lot of these people, have created businesses before in their lives as well, or they've led particular business units too. And there are a lot of opportunities to be able to help entrepreneurs when it comes to being able to have the type of impact that you want to have from a business perspective or from a leading an organization perspective. And so we've worked with a number of different companies, right? We work with clients across every sector of the economy, from all sizes of business across every region of the world as well. And being able to have those types of insights or that type of network of insights in a lot of ways is something that entrepreneurs are looking for and that they find incredibly useful too, is being able to tap into a larger network of connections too, and being part of that broader ecosystem and being able to use more established companies to be able to do that. And then finally, there's also mergers and acquisitions that we look to do all the time as well. And being able to bring in great companies that are doing great things in-house, and being able to grow ourselves in that way too, is something that we are constantly looking to do as well. But as I mentioned, it's not all about what we're trying to do out in the economy. A lot of it is really about trying to transform ourselves too. We take climate change very seriously. It's probably one of the number one kind of corporate responsibility priorities of the firm. In Canada itself, we have and we're proud of having an Indigenous Reconciliation Action Plan. Of course, that's just the first step of a much longer journey when it comes to Indigenous reconciliation. But these are firm priorities that we really look to explore and to have the most positive social impact possible in the economy. And we need help to do this. Certainly, we have a number of expertise when it comes to climate change, when it comes to hydrogen energy, when it comes to a number of different areas that are necessary to address climate change. But there are a lot of incredible smaller businesses, entrepreneurs out there that are doing amazing things when it comes to clean tech, when it comes to using data or blockchain, when it comes to tracking emissions and things along these lines. And helping us be able to improve our own organizational performance when it comes to our own climate impact and social impact in the economy is something that we look for a lot of social entrepreneurs to help us with as well. And then finally, there's innovation. You know, I mentioned earlier on that we really look for entrepreneurs to help drive us with new ideas when it comes to the marketplace, with new ideas on what it is that we can do. And in a lot of ways, we partner with smaller or with new entrepreneurs to be able to do that too. Now, I do a lot of work when it comes to the economy, obviously economic modeling and things like that. But we're also focused quite a bit on the doing of things when it comes to the economy, not only research and modeling too. And so I'm involved in a lot of investment attraction, trying to bring investment to certain regions, to certain countries of the world too. And there are a lot of things that investors are looking for when they're making those types of decisions. Certainly they look at tax rates and they look at regulatory complexity and they look at the level of talent that's involved in an economy and they look at infrastructure and things like that. But increasingly more and more, the number one thing that I find that investors are looking for is an economic ecosystem. That's really what they try and invest in, is that they are looking for actual economies where there are opportunities to be able to buy technologies from smaller businesses or buy technologies from startups to be able to supercharge their own growth. Where they're looking for hubs of talent when it comes to particular skill sets in particular sectors. And part of that is that they're looking for a lot of younger entrepreneurs with skill sets to be in that type of ecosystem. And so that's why, I think that what's so important is this two-way street, is actually really being able to bring together these established companies and smaller entrepreneurs or startups to be able to really come together and create these types of ecosystems that really helps to make that economy greater than the sum of its parts. Is that when you have these types of businesses operating together, they really start pushing each other to achieve new things and to have a greater impact. And this is the direction that the economy is going overall. When we're talking to clients, when we're talking to investors, when we're talking to businesses all across the world too. And so maybe Majid, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Trevon. It's wonderful. And, for sharing your thoughts about the relationship between established institutions, especially as a means of problem solving and innovation for larger institutions through new entrepreneurs, startups. And the system dynamics that you've shown us through that slide is also extremely interesting. Really appreciate that. And with that, this is amazing content. Our panel session comes to an end. Absolutely amazing, thought-provoking stuff. Quite a bit to think about. Just a reminder that we're taking questions from the Q&A function in Zoom. There's obviously a few questions there right now. And we should start our Q&A panel at this point. So speakers, I would encourage you to return to us on your video as we cycle through some of these brilliant questions. I'd love to start off with it's a merger of two questions. So both Samira and Trevon particularly paid attention to this. Juan, we'll also get your thoughts on it if we're able, that there are opportunities for new entrepreneurs to contribute to innovation, to contribute to sustainability and problem solving for large institutions. But there's two aspects to them. Number one, how do they access these large organizations. If you have any tips on that, seeing that you have been on the other side, it would be amazing for you to share some tips and tricks with us here, and then I'll go into the second aspect of this issue. Whoever wants to start, please.
Yeah, why don't I start? And I think that I mean, you know, there's no kind of magic wand to be able to do this. Each organization will work in a different way, and there are multiple ways in which to be able to build a relationship with a larger organization. I think that starting with partnerships is very important. And sometimes that can be having a larger organization as a client. But what we really look at, even when we're looking at working together with younger entrepreneurs, even when we're looking at a potential acquisition at some point, it always starts with a partnership. Because really what we're always looking for is how do we ensure that each of our mutual growth is accretive to one another. And so that's always important, but to actually get your foot in the door, obviously there are a number of different tactics, and cold calls aren't necessarily the most useful. I think, what's probably most important is being part of that ecosystem. Is when it comes to having the skill sets that larger organizations are looking for, then they might be intrigued in potentially working together with you. When it comes to just being out there with new technologies and speaking to as many different potential partners as possible that are part of that ecosystem, that's incredibly important too. And something that's good to keep in mind, because it can seem daunting. If you're a young entrepreneur and you have a new product or a new company, and you wonder how these bigger players will even receive you, as I mentioned, they're looking to do this now. If they are not constantly innovating and evolving, then they're going to be losing out when it comes to the market share. And so they're looking for people to partner with. And so that's why it's so important to be proactive and be positive about it, is because there are constant opportunities that are happening now with the accelerating pace of change, probably more so than there ever have been before. And if you just are part of that ecosystem and start having those conversations, if you have a really good product or service, then eventually you'll find someone where it'll work out in terms of partnership and maybe more.
Thank you, Trevon. Samira, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, just very quickly, echoing some of what Trevon said, but going into detail from my experience. So one is some of the programs that I mentioned, just entrepreneurs availing those, trying to apply for those. That's a very basic one. Second, unrelated to the programs, are competitions and opportunities to pitch, which is related to what Trevon mentioned with regards to voice and getting sort of the word out there regarding the innovation you're creating, et cetera, is quite important. And then the most important piece is really the social capital and the relationships piece, which is also the toughest piece. So finding an advocate or a champion that is aligned to your mission or that really believes in your technology internally can go such a long way. And I can't stress that enough. It may not be the first, second, third, or fourth conversation where you get that sort of quote partnership going, or that you get a chance to pilot something or get in front of leadership, but maybe on the fifth, sixth, seventh conversation, it might work out. So that's another piece of it. And I know that sometimes, entrepreneurs are very focused on their current innovation, but if you see an opportunity like a pandemic or what's taking place in Ukraine, and you see the applicability of your technology in a space that is emerging as a high need area, if your resources allow you to do it, and if it makes sense, it would be worth your while to explore that type of a pivot, and that applicability can go a long way to having an opportunity to really pilot with a large corporation. And I'm not saying that you should sort of corrupt your model or your product based on feedback, but it's just really adapting to a high needed area currently can get you sort of a conversation that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Thanks, Samira. And I think what I'm hearing from both yourself and Trevon is that sometimes approaching a large firm, especially individually, could be, can have barriers associated, but being part of networks that form a bridge between large organizations and smaller ones, and starting that as a bridge making mechanism, it sounds like a very practical way whether those are associations or pitch competitions or networks where you can kind of be more visible. Thank you so much. Juan, I'd like to pose the second part of that question to you. You had spoken about exchange, contracting, and co-creation. And how do you see risk management, which comes up a lot for large corporations? Because large corporations tend to work with other large businesses and established businesses because of managing their risk of quality, of scale, and so on. So how do you see your model kind of facilitating the risk management between new entrepreneurs and established companies?
Super. Quisiera nada
Great.
más agregar.
Well, I just want to elaborate a little bit more on the previous question first. I think that many times most of the entrepreneurs are not able to have this first contact with these large corporations because they are afraid of doing so, or because they think their startup is not at the level of the large corporations. And I would say that from the entrepreneurs' side, they should take those risks, knock on the doors. It is incredibly easy now to reach out to anyone in a company through LinkedIn or through some events. Okay, we are going through the pandemic and those events have not been taking place, but you can contact LinkedIn. We are looking at two great examples with Trevon and Samira, and it is amazing how friendly and how open the people in these large companies are, and they want to listen to you and see how you're going to be adding value. The first point is the leave that fear aside. And regarding risk management, I think that it is extremely important for entrepreneurs to know where they are standing and try to, without trying to be ambitious, but they have to be very specific on what they can offer to the large corporations. The large corporations do see a value in entrepreneurships because they can make mistakes in a agile and cheap manner. It's not the same dimension of a mistake or an error from Microsoft or a small social business. If you propose as a pilot, just like Samira mentioned, or if you're working hand in hand with a large corporation, you will be able to react faster. For a company to launch a new company, a new product, or a new initiative, it takes months. An entrepreneur in a small business, a new initiative can be created in just in a couple of weeks. But if you are not certain of what you can do or the value that you can add as an entrepreneur, don't want to eat that whole cake. It may be very appealing to sell thousands of millions of um, projects. When I started with large projects, I made many mistakes because I did not have that certainty that we had all the skills and capacities available to be successful in such a large project. So why don't you start small, and then you can take on more and more ambitious projects as you grow.
Wonderful, Juan. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts there. And there was a comment in the Q&A I just want to quickly address. I think it was from Luis, if I'm not mistaken, about how to contact Samira in case, and I think Samira had posted her email and her had mentioned that you can contact her through LinkedIn. So just quickly addressing that. Coming to the next question, Samira, now that we're mentioning your name, this question is for you. And so Dawson was wondering, while you were at your time at Microsoft, how did you see Microsoft's mission at a local level being attained, linking with small business and startups? Could you share any experiences that you saw on programs and so on during your time at Microsoft?
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft has a dedicated social entrepreneurship program, which, now I'm seeing more and more of, but quite unique. Came out during the pandemic. It is global in nature. And what's interesting to me is, although there's this focus on social entrepreneurship and social enterprises, they are treated and supported like other startup businesses. So there isn't this false dichotomy between social and core business support. And I think that's really important, because some of the same building blocks that any business needs to succeed is what you need as a social enterprise or a social entrepreneur. You need inroads into capital, you need eyes on you, you need business support, you need partners to co-create with. So there is an entire social entrepreneurship component that is giving sort of access to technology up to a certain level of Azure cloud credits. There is support, business support through the company. And in some cases there are like competitions that exist for a particular topic. Like there's a climate innovation fund that speaks to the capital side. So I think that's a huge, amazing, and exciting commitment. However, in other areas of the business, I also see social enterprises and entrepreneurs coming up. I was working more on the impact side. So on the digital inclusion side, or connecting people to skilling opportunities and jobs. There were also conversations we were having with social entrepreneurs or enterprises who are focused on solving the same challenge from a business perspective, wherever they're sitting in specific cities and locations in the US. So you see large companies trying to solve problems that startups are also trying to solve. And these conversations are very active and very live, without going into too much detail.
Wonderful, Samira. This is great. We have a very interesting question here from Ruel. It's a general question to all speakers, so please feel free to jump in. So Ruel says that partnering between established companies and entrepreneurs is a great thing, that acknowledgement is there. But Ruel is wondering whether partnering with established companies somehow limits the expansion of an innovative business idea. Does the established company allow starter companies to become unique and can it only be a sister company or under the shadow of a big company? If someone would like to share your experiences with how things play out with respect to ideas being kind of swallowed in and actually going opposite to the intention of promoting startups and innovation. Anyone can jump in, please.
There is a way to do it without being swallowed by the large company. If you're built on their platform and you're, let's say, a tech partner or an ISV or a solution provider, et cetera, there's a very specific program you're playing in. And it's not as though your entire sort of future strategy or you're being swallowed. You're really just building and availing the company's resources in many cases. But depending on how far you are down the partnership journey, I can see that being a risk. But I wouldn't say it's always a risk. It really depends on how the smaller company is maintaining boundaries.
Great. Juan, were you going to jump in there?
I see things completely different. Working with large corporations and entrepreneurs in those large companies and the small social businesses, they do think as a big challenge to be able to meet the requirements of a large corporation. You need to upgrade your management policies, your deliverables, your outcomes, your technology. So that forces you to upgrade or to raise the bar of your company. If you are working with these large companies, you are going to be in an ongoing improvement, but also you're going to be involved in very large and ambitious projects, and maybe you will not be able to meet their needs. You have to be very careful, because there are some companies that have payment policies that are very aggressive for small businesses. Then there is there are other companies that would like you to respond very quickly, but you don't have the infrastructure to do so. But there are many things you have to take into consideration. However, you can grow together with a large corporation. But if you do not want to have large partners, you're going to be restricted to continue with the small businesses. So that's something natural that goes hand in hand when you want to achieve more.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe add something to that as well, and that's that. And first of all, that is very important that you choose the right partner. You know, not all larger organizations are the same, and you obviously want to choose one that has similar values to you, that's trying to achieve the same goals, that is looking to have a similar type of social impact or any type of impact, and that will also give you what it is that you need to continue to thrive within their organization or through a partnership. That's very important to figure out at the beginning. But and then secondly, if you do find that stuff in an organization that you're going to partner with, then you know, thinking about it in terms of being swallowed up is the wrong way to think about it. It's actually, you know, if this large organization actually has the same values as me and is willing to give me what I need to thrive, then how can I help lead this type of organization, because they're trying to achieve the same things that I am. The reason why they want to partner with me is because they know that I can contribute to something that they're not able to do on their own. You know, I think when you're actually working together with the right type of large organization, where they have the same types of values, then they're really taking these things seriously, and they're looking to partner with smaller firms for a reason. And so it's not about being swallowed up, that you're just going to become, you know, a piece of this larger organization. They are also looking to have the same type of impact that you're trying to have. It's just not this false dichotomy that exists sometimes between large and small. And they're looking for leaders to do it. And that's the type of opportunity you have if you have the right partner.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to the speakers. And thank you to that very thought-provoking question from Ruel. Lots of different ideas stemming from that. I think we have enough time for one more question, and this is a general question to the panel. There's so much discussion on sustainability, green initiatives, ESG, carbon, and clean tech, like Trevon mentioned. Do you have any thoughts about particular opportunities or low-hanging fruit you might have seen for startups and new entrepreneurs to capitalize on in this context?
Hay por ahí, por ejemplo, una oportunidad muy
There
interesante.
is a very interesting opportunity, in fact, in terms of carbon neutrality, neutral efforts, carbon footprint reduction, renewable energy, at least in Mexico and in Latin America. Regarding environment, there are some trends like carbon neutral, carbon footprint, and renewable energy. These are very interesting opportunities, and this is something that has already been mentioned. Trevon and Samira, I see more corporate venture projects where companies are looking for startups to help them address their social and environmental issues. So the first thing I would like to tell you is that see what projects have already been established. Microsoft, Deloitte has many calls and many other corporates. So look at those calls, and because for many of these companies trying to address the SDGs is difficult because it's not part of their core business, and that's where entrepreneurs have great opportunities. So I would like to recommend to look for these programs on sustainability and other areas, but there are some other topics where companies are more interested than others. These low-hanging fruits, for instance, diversity. Diversity is also a trend. It's a topic that is extremely relevant. And Samira mentioned that before. Look what is happening in the global context. Of course, the effect of what is happening in Europe with Ukraine and Russia, that will create some market trends, the restrictions to access to certain items or products. So companies will be looking for new companies that can address these challenges.
Juan, thank you so much for those leads and those tips. for things to look out for? Samira and Trevon, any thoughts on that?
Juan did an excellent job. Water, another area that companies are thinking a lot about. I would say second or in parallel, waste. Juan already mentioned the humanitarian sector and humanitarian needs there. So I would say those are some areas that are cropping up. And in addition, the human sort of value chain and human rights. That's another area. I think it's behind, for lack of better words, or it's not as mature as the environmental outcomes piece of it, but that's sort of definitely next up. And to just watch the regulatory and legislative environment, as well as innovation coming from different markets to capture those opportunities.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's much I can add other than, you know, I talk to all different types of businesses all the time and have a number of them as clients. And I think that increasingly right now, a lot of them are focused on people, on their own people within their own organizations, and how to ensure that they have a better type of experience, as Juan mentioned, on diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. When it comes to the labor market, on skills, and there being a shortage of things that they need to. And so, you know, if there is one thing that kind of cuts across sectors and regions and sizes of business, that's certainly something that I think a lot of people are focused on.
Perfect. Perfect. We do have time for one final question. This is the last 2 minutes. I think we'll end off with Trevon, yourself, if that's okay. It's a question to you, and from Dawson. And it says, Trevon, in your work, do you help entrepreneurs having only business ideas without a minimum viable product to grow into business entities? Or that could also be phrased, is it necessary in the type of work that you do to have a certain stage of minimum viable product, or could it be earlier than that?
Oh, it can be earlier than that. I mean, you know, when I mentioned Deloitte Ventures, we're usually looking for Series A, Series B by that point with a large fund, but we certainly help you know, people that are just at an idea stage as well, whether it's a company themselves or whether it's just an individual. Like if you have a great idea, then we might want to build it internally as well. And so, you know, if your idea is really good, there are certainly no limitations there.
Great, Trevon, thank you so much for that response. With that, I want to thank the speakers that gave us so much engaging content for today's topic on how can established companies support new entrepreneurs in their endeavors and create those linkages. It was a really engaging discussion. I want to again thank you to all the speakers. Your schedules are so busy. So taking out this time for us is really appreciated. And at the same time, I want to thank the attendees for their amazing engagement. We're not ending the session yet. Don't worry. I just have to hand it back to Brock and Van. Thank you for your questions, for your engagement. And finally, a couple of shout outs that were left. I saw some people tuning in from Montreal, from Tanzania, and lots of shout outs for Mexico. So with that, I would like to hand it back to Brock Dickinson. Thank you, Brock.
Thank you very much, Majid, and great job, Majid, facilitating. It's never easy to herd all the cats during these sessions with the questions coming in multiple languages and sort of thinking about who best to send them to. So great job, Majid, and great job to all the speakers. There was a question that just popped up in the chat, and there's a formal response there, but let me just say that these sessions are being recorded, and that in the future, once all 5 of our workshops are done over the month of March, these sessions will be posted to YouTube and will be available, and we will send out the links or the information about how to access those to everybody who's registered once the sessions are done. So you can watch for those in April. But with such amazing content, it's great to be able to kind of go back to it, to see those slides again, and to kind of make sure that you get access to the resources that have been talked about. With that, I do want to take a moment before we close to turn things over to Ben Gadquath to talk a little bit about one of the CEC's upcoming initiatives, the Youth Innovation Challenge. Ben is coming to us today from Montreal, Quebec. And Ben works with the CEC as the coordinator for diverse and inclusive outreach and engagement. So Ben, over to you.
Thanks so much, Brock, and thanks again to the panelists for such an intriguing and important discussion, and also for the really practical tips that you've given to the entrepreneurs and innovators in attendance today. Just before we close off, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the CEC's Youth Innovation Challenge. And again, this is particularly for those of you who are in attendance today and thinking about solutions for environmental problems in your communities. If you're less familiar with the CEC and our Youth Innovation Challenge, I'll just take a moment to tell you a little bit more about it. Since 2017, we've been working with North American youth who are addressing environmental challenges from plastic waste to pesticides to chemicals in synthetic hair extensions, from honeybee conservation, and so much more. And so throughout the course of this time, we've been able to offer young entrepreneurs and innovators seed funding, mentorship opportunities, networking opportunities, and the chance to present their solutions to the top environment ministers of Canada, Mexico, and the United States at our annual council session. And so this year, we're opening up the exact same opportunity to those entrepreneurs and innovators who are addressing COVID-19 issues and environmental issues at the same time. So this year, the challenge ends on March 31st, and we encourage you to visit cec.submittable.com to learn more about what you can do to further strengthen your environmental solution and your COVID-19 recovery solution as well. So if you're interested, please do visit cec.submittable.com to learn more. And again, the deadline is March 31st. This year, we're offering up to $15K Canadian in funding to those solutions who make it to the final round of the Youth Innovation Challenge. And so if you're interested, if you know somebody who is interested, we really encourage and look for solutions that are critical to supporting all of our communities across North America. And with that, I'll leave this conversation here and I'll pass it back on to Brock.
Thank you, Ben. And that's always such an exciting competition. And later in this series of workshops, we will hear from some previous winners. In particular, in the last session, we have past winners from Canada and from Mexico who will be taking part. But we kind of work a lot of these folks into these workshops multiple times on different occasions. So we will be hearing from lots of great examples of past participants and past winners of the Youth Innovation Challenge. I want to just wrap up by offering a few quick thank yous. I want to begin by thanking the interpreters. I think we aged them several years today because we're so excited about these topics. It's hard to slow down sometimes and take a breath. So thank you for the amazing work that you have done in translating this content into multiple languages so that we can all gain access to this important information. I also want to thank Liliana and the others working the tech side of things back at CEC headquarters in Montreal. It seems to flow so smoothly, but there's a lot of work that's being done behind the scenes in coordinating these Zoom structures to make sure that everything works well. I want to thank Ban and her colleagues, particularly Georgina and Eleanor at the CEC, who are also participating in the background, but really instrumental in making this happen. And to members of my own team at Waterloo, Majid, Nathan, Nick, it's been great to have you as part of this session. But most importantly, let me offer thanks to those who are part of the panel today. Majid, you did a great job facilitating. Juan, Samira, Trevon, we really appreciate the time and the effort, and above all, the information that you shared. This has been great. And finally, to the participants, we peaked at 152. It was the number that I saw this afternoon. So lots of people from all over the world taking part in this session. It's great to have you here. I hope you gained something of value, but we are grateful for your participation and for your interest in these issues. The way that we will change the world, the way that we will improve our environment and our communities is by learning and by sharing what we learn. And it's fantastic to have so many of you here as part of that process. We will be gathered again 1 week from today to do this all over again. We'll be looking at entrepreneurship and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. How can entrepreneurship be used as a tool to achieve the SDGs? We hope that you'll join us. We'll have speakers again from all across North America, and we look forward to your continued participation as we explore these important topics. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.